Hello, everybody. It is 10:05 p.m. Central Time on Wednesday, December 7th, 2016, and I apologize for the late start. Had to get some live streaming issues sorted out, and I don't know if it's fixed or not, but I was running at least 2 to 3 minutes behind live, not to my doing. I had to shut it down and restart it through YouTube, and hopefully that'll solve the problem, but regardless, if I'm not live, it's 10:06 p.m. Central Time. Take a look at your clock, and if it's not matched up with what I'm saying right now live, then you know it's still running behind live. Okay, so that being said, welcome into the Earthquake 3D live stream, where we're daily recapping events around the planet, seismically speaking. And we also do issue daily and weekly earthquake forecasts for new areas to watch for activity. So, let's just get right into it. To everybody in chat, what's up? Good to see all the regulars here, all the people who normally return every night. Also, to everybody here who's new, please subscribe up. I'm trying to grow my channel as much as possible, and I'd be real happy if I could hit 170,000 by the end of this month. We'll see. Trying to grow, it's hard on YouTube when you're not flashy and you don't have a multi-channel network backing you up. So let's get into it. What struck today? Now, first of all, we're going to see a map that you see on the screen here on the globe. And this is a progression map showing the way pressure transfers across the planet from zone to zone. And where there's a letter D, that's normally a spot where we see deep earthquakes. And then we see arrows pointing out from those regions. And we follow the arrows, and that's the way the earthquake pressure transfers around the entire planet. And we follow the arrows, and that's the way that. And we see, for instance, several of the spots we took the entire planet. The way the earthquake goes, pointing out the letter way pressure today. Now, first on YouTube, when you're be in chat speaking, running behind, and it is 10:05 p.m. Central Time on Wednesday, December 7th. 2016, and I apologize for the late start. Had to get some live streaming issues sorted out, and I don't know if it's fixed or not, but I was running at least 2 to 3 minutes behind live, not to my doing. I had to shut it down and restart it through YouTube, and hopefully that'll solve the problem. But regardless, if I'm not live, it's 10:06 p.m. Central Time. Take a look at your clock, and if it's not matched up with what I'm saying right now live, then you know it's still running behind live. Okay, so that being said, welcome into the Earthquake 3D live stream, where we're daily recapping events around the planet, seismically speaking. And we also do issue daily and weekly earthquake forecasts for new areas to watch for activity. So, let's just get right into it. To everybody in chat, what's up? Good to see all the regulars here, all the people who normally return every night. Also, to everybody here who's new, please subscribe up. I'm trying to grow my channel as much as possible, and I'd be real happy if I could hit 170,000 by the end of this month. We'll see. Trying to grow, it's hard on YouTube when you're not flashy and you don't have a multi-channel network backing you up. So let's get into it. What struck today? Now, first of all, we're going to see a map that you see on the screen here on the globe. And this is a progression map showing the way pressure transfers across the planet from zone to zone. And where there's a letter D, that's normally a spot where we see deep earthquakes. And then we see arrows pointing out from those regions. And we follow the arrows, and that's the way the earthquake pressure transfers around the entire planet. And we see, for instance, several of the spots we talked about in the last day have been hit. And we could start anywhere on the planet and get into it. So let's start over in Europe, since we were talking about Italy seeing a renewed swarm and the threat of 4.0 activity. Well, two things happened. First of all, a 4.0, right on the money, hit down here in South Greece. And I'll highlight that on the map. Secondly, the swarm back in Italy returned in earnest, and it went up into the mid-range 3. I think it topped out at 3.2 on some of these feeds. Well, guys, guess what? We now have an Italy feed for Earthquake 3D. Thanks to MC Player and working with a few other people who I need to get their names so that I can give them appropriate credit as well. But what you see on the screen here now is the INGV list from the Italian agency itself showing today's earthquakes. So clearly, there's many more earthquakes striking in the location in the 2 to 3 range, and we're only getting a partial list from the EMSC. So that being said, when we add all of these together, this definitely equals the movement we were expecting to see today in Italy, and not only there, but other areas along the plate boundary, which I will turn down the ring so you can see this. The pressure transfers up and out of Italy across France, across UK, and goes out to the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, ultimately. But many huge thanks to MC Player for getting this together, and the people in Italy, I'm sure, will appreciate this as well. This is going to enable us to better forecast for the region. Now, also, there's other feeds that have been provided by the United Arab Emirates, Mexico, NR Canada, Portugal, many others, guys. So I've got a nice list from which to use to determine our earthquake activity around the planet. Hopefully, someday, as soon as I get a better computer, we can actually get a global feed of all the feeds put together on one single globe here. It'll be a lot of earthquakes. It'll be dinging a lot, but you'll get a better picture of what's really going on. Excuse me. So, that being said, look what struck over here in the West Pacific, guys. There was a deep earthquake. You can see it raised high off the globe up near Japan on the Izu Ridge, 4.6, north of Guam. Due west of there, a shallow 5. Struck almost on the same latitude, maybe just a little bit north. But, so we get a 4.6 on one side, 5.0 on the other. Both on the north side of our split. You see where the arrows go? The arrows indicate the spot where we see movement go to and from, and we always see equidistantly spaced movement on both sides of here, over at Guam and over at Taiwan. And that's exactly what happened today. 4.6 deep led to shallow 5, both sides. Now, down here in Indonesia at our deep earthquake location from a day ago, you may remember our deep earthquakes, now we're seeing a swarm of 4s and 5s break out at western Papua New Guinea, East Timor, and East Malaysia going into Philippines. I mean, so many so that it's almost hard to see the island chain through all the different earthquakes that struck. Secondly, reports have come in that the 6.5 over here in Indonesia, which we went and looked up last night and found it was more like a 7. But regardless, they went with 6.5. Now 100 people are confirmed dead. So it went from 25 to 100. 100 different people killed. That's not counting injuries, guys. So we issued the warning. There was a 2-day warning for this to occur. And we were looking for a 7. And a 7 hit. Many of the stations showed it, but they went with the low ball on this. But now there's 100 people dead. Do we really believe 100 people in Indonesia from a 6? I don't know. I just don't know. Okay, so that being said, over in the West Pacific, activity striking our middle points, our fulcrum points. Because look at the spots that were hit last night versus the spots that were hit today. Each middle point. Not just there, but going west over into Asia. Check it out, 5.0 struck where? Right along our northern bend at the tip of the arrow where we see D marked for deep earthquake. Okay, the deep earthquake struck there first, but the shallow 4.9 followed it up right at the same spot. Now this is all going to push back into Greece and Turkey in the next 2 days. Well, actually now in the next 24 hours. As I told you last night, tonight I would be reporting on an increase in earthquakes in Italy, Greece, and Turkey, topping out in the 4 range. Now I was looking towards mid 4 and it's low 4. Now the magnitudes on that, we can go debate the magnitudes all we want, but they went with 4. I'm showing you 4 because that's all I can show you. That's all that's there. But if you go check the station list, many going above 4 up into the mid-range 4, okay? So, regardless of whether it's a mid-range 4 or a low 4, there's our 4 in Greece and the increased swarm back in Italy, which means by tomorrow, Italy time now, since it's 10, let's see, it's 4 a.m. there right now, or 5 a.m. Well, guys, by sundown, we should be reporting that there's another 4 striking here back in Italy. And I'm more leaning towards 4.5. 4.5, I'm still sticking to it. We have another 4.9 backing this all up. So, we already have a 4. We already have 2s and 3s. We have a huge stack of earthquakes in Italy itself, which means going back up into the 4s. You are. And count on that by the end of the day, your time, which should put it at like early a.m. my time. So by tomorrow morning, our time, I should be reporting on that. What else? Oh, yes. Over here beyond Europe, going back out towards the mid-Atlantic, look what just got struck. Gibraltar, west of Portugal. And we now have the Portugal feed, the IPMA, again thanks to MC Player. And the IPMA is showing us the last week of earthquakes here, so we don't want to see the full last week. Let's just look at the last day and a half. And again, we're not getting the full picture from any of these other agencies, so you have to go to each individual country. Now you can see it. Everywhere west of Gibraltar has swarmed, going out towards the Azores, reaching down towards the Canaries as well. Well, this is expected. The pressure transferring off that, and several going up towards 3.0. Okay, last 48 hours shows it. Okay, so the Portugal agency showing us, again, westward pressure transfer. And it always happens this way, guys. Always. So, let's get into some other earthquakes. Let's go check the combined USGS and EMSC feed for the United States. And when we take a look at the activity that hit here in the U.S. today, there's a few things that are noteworthy that are not being reported by the USGS or the Europeans. Now, take a look at it. This is the USGS feed. You can go check the USGS page if you don't believe that this is an accurate feed. Now, I'm going to go turn on the Mexican agency. Mexican agency is reporting the last day of 2.5 and greater. Now, take a look at it, guys. Take a look at it. Now, I'm going to highlight some of these and we'll read the information. Okay? So, December 6th, last night, 9:55 p.m., UTC 3:55. Magnitude 4.2, depth 5 kilometers, Gulf of California. That alone, right there. Okay, but let's go down a little bit more. 4.0. December 5th, UTC 1936, so just over 24 hours ago. Magnitude 4.0, depth 42 kilometers. Right at the U.S. border. And I mean right at the U.S. border, guys. So, USGS, what gives? Look at all the activity down to the south, all above 4. USGS, what gives? And I'll get the stats on this. The most recent, 4.2. Let's see. That's listed as December 6th. These are December 6th. So going into this morning. What can I say? We're not getting the full picture. Okay, so let's go back over to the combined USGS and EMSC feed, showing us supposedly everything 2.5 and greater on the planet, and again, lack of earthquakes. So, what does this mean? It means 4s struck up to the north, 4s struck down to the south, 3s filling that in between, and I would dare say there's probably some striking off the coast that they're not showing us either. We're wholly dependent on the USGS to give us this information, and apparently they're not, guys. They're not. And I don't know why. I don't know why they would want to omit earthquakes that are striking there. Oh, that's right. We issued a forecast for that location. For the Gulf of California. Oh, anyway, so what are we looking for? Well, to get a better picture, let's go turn on our USGS last day magnitude all feed to see all of our smaller microquakes. Again, now I'm not trusting this feed much anymore, guys. I mean, it's not that there's anything wrong with the people at the agency. It's just there's some kind of problem going on here where they're not giving us the information that we need. All right, so that being said, take a look at what struck today throughout California, according to the USGS. Swarm up at Clear Lake. Swarm returning back at Long Valley Caldera, different spot than we were talking about before. Swarm returning down at South Long Valley, back at Coso Volcanic Junction. Also, all the way to the south at Salton Sea, with the largest earthquake of the day striking just to the south of Salton Sea, 4.0. What did we tell you guys to watch for? We got to go back to last night's update. What did we tell you to watch for? We told you to watch for 4.0 activity near Salton Sea. Now there's a 4.0 right there, and the USGS doesn't report it, but the Mexicans do. I'm getting upset because I feel like I'm getting played here. Okay? And they sent their biggest names in the industry to my pages to actually try and stop the earthquake forecasting and stop my fundraisers. And they used their public pages to do it from the agencies out here on the West Coast. And now here we are. And they're omitting 4s right at the border that we're looking for that they don't report. And you see it for yourself. Go check the Mexican agency. You don't have to take my word for it. There it is recorded. And the Mexicans didn't get it wrong. Mexicans did not get it wrong. It is reported by them, not reported by our own agency. That all being said, where do we watch for movement? Well, if we take everything else into account, since there's 4s down to the south here, that has now finished the cycle for pressure to transfer to the south, which means we have a new round of pressure building here off the coast. Northwest, again, we're about to get hit again off the coast of California, Gorda Escarpment, going just north to where our red arrow tip is right here. Okay, so very small little area. Small area right along the coast. And magnitude-wise, well, let's take a look at what's striking around the rest of the plate. To see that, let's turn back on our combined USGS and EMSC feed, which I'm starting to question more and more every day. Not because of them being unreliable, but just because there's just a lack of data sharing going on that we're going to fix. We're going to get everybody's agency all on one feed, come hell or high water. So, look at it. There's 5s progressing around the plate right now, going up to 5.3. So 5, 5, 5 all on the last day. Down here to the south, upper 4s. You can add this together and equal a single 5. And we also had yesterday our 5s and 6 up to the north in Caribbean, which means most likely we are looking at a mid-range 5 to develop. Oh, I hear a little cat. Mid-range 5 to develop in the next 48 hours to 72 hours. Let's put a 72 on it, but it's most likely to strike in the next 48. Okay? So, that being said, then we watch for movement over to the east. Second thing going on here, we have to watch for a new swarm to break out between now and then. So, in the next, I'd say 24 hours, we're going to have to watch for a new swarm in central Oklahoma. Central Oklahoma this time. Due to the pressure coming down, it's pretty obvious. We have 3s breaking out across Utah along the western edge of our Craton Bend. Now, our arrows here, you see, go up through St. Louis and back down and bend around and go up the east coast. This is where earthquakes strike, right on this interior line, the interior line of the red. So, as we come down through Colorado, through Wyoming, Colorado, New Mexico, western Texas, central Texas, again going up through Oklahoma, kind of spanning out into Kansas a little bit, but mostly staying in Oklahoma, going across Arkansas, back up to southeast Illinois, believe it or not, where we have fracking operations there and some earthquakes that strike there, and then going down to the south across Alabama, where there's more fracking, back up the east coast across Virginia, West Virginia, New York, and Pennsylvania. They're fracking there as well. So, pretty much everywhere along the interior edge of these red lines, there are fracking operations. Skip over Montana. Montana and New Mexico, western New Mexico, not really as much, but the rest of the states along through here, it's amazing how many, I'd say tens of thousands of different drill puncture points are put along through here. So, amazing, amazing stuff, guys. Okay, so, in the next couple days, swarm back in Oklahoma, due to the 3s coming across. It got less than we were expecting. That was good, but where did you top out at? What was it, 4.2, 3.9 over this past week? I don't quite recall. Let's take a look. 3.9 is where they ultimately ended up with that, right? Okay, well, it was 4.2 to begin with, but they went down with it. Take a look at the pressure transfer across the edge of the craton. I think this is pretty obvious, too. Look which way it follows. It follows from west to east along the interior edge of the craton. And I would dare say there's a few spots in here, and maybe in Texas, that aren't reporting their earthquakes at the fracking operations. I think they stopped reporting earthquakes in Texas, guys. Seriously, I think the Texas Railroad Commission, the people who regulate the wells, I think they've stopped reporting seismic events in Texas overall to alleviate the concern and to just stop people from even paying attention. Because there's no way there's not going to even be a 0.0 or 1 or something like that in Texas over months and months and months. No way. So that means they're deliberately not reporting earthquakes out of these regions here in the U.S. And it's a good, it's a scandal, actually. Yeah, so that being said, look at the other locations down to the south. I mean, we've got a lot going on that happened over the past couple of days, but today in particular, just to the south, right at our deep earthquake location, more deep 3s and 4s, which means pressure is trying to reach down underneath the plate and reach down to South Sandwich Islands. And it's going to pop back up down here with a 5, most likely near our X marks the spot at the South Sandwich Islands, where pressure terminates. Everywhere where you see an X, that's where our pressure ultimately ends up, or tries to end up, heading in that direction. Now the pressure may lose its momentum before it ever reaches its final destination, in which case you see it settle out with a swarm, and that's that. But most of the time, these deep earthquakes that are happening, they're the main prime pusher of the plate movement overall. And over the past day and a half, we've seen nothing but new deep earthquakes. Let me show you how many there are. See them raised high off the globe here? There's 1, 2, 3, 4, and if you count the deep 6.3 that kicked it all off, that's 5 in the last 4 days. So we have 5 new deep earthquakes in the last 4 to 5 days. You see them raised all high off the globe here, and that indicates that the West Pacific is under serious stress. And there's only a few spots where we haven't seen any new movement. But in these spots where we haven't seen any new seismic activity, we've seen new eruptions. There's 2 volcanoes here that keep putting off new blasts every single day. And I can show that to you. You know what? Let's just go ahead and do that real quick. Let's go open up a copy of Volcano Discovery and take a quick look. Always recommend you do this. This plays into your seismic activity. Volcanoes reduce the pressure on a particular plate boundary. So if there's pressure coming in on the plate boundary and a volcano erupts there, it relieves the pressure and, of course, relieves the stress of an earthquake or the potential of an earthquake. So here we go. Papua New Guinea. 2 new blasts at Bagana and Lenggila. Also, Dukono Halmahera, which is in Indonesia, Colima in western Mexico, Turrialba in Costa Rica, and Copihu in Argentina. This is basically going from Mexico to Central America down to Argentina. 3 different volcanoes erupting along the East Pacific. Let's show you again where it is. Mexico, middle of our silent zone. Here, Colima volcano in western Mexico. Then, going down to the south, Turrialba at Costa Rica, down here near Panama. And then going further south at Copihu. And Copihu is down here in South Chile. Well, that's where the earthquake stopped. The earthquake stopped right at Copihu, pretty much. I mean, there's 1 earthquake to the south, but the swarm's carrying on right down to Copihu. Then hits Copihu, boom, eruption happens, and it just so happens that that's the spot where pressure transfers over to the east, right by Copihu and Mount Hudson. Mount Hudson put off 70 new earthquakes in the last couple of days. 70. So overall, you can see the pressure, the way it transfers down to the south. So the way we compute our magnitudes, the way we look for what size to look for, you have to add up the earthquakes in both sides of the zone you're watching. So, for instance, in between this 5.0 and the swarm or cluster of 5s over here to the west in Indonesia, our halfway point brings us down in eastern Papua New Guinea, where those 2 new eruptions occurred. So the 2 new eruptions equal 2 5s. And if there's 2 5s, that's equal to 5.1. Well, that fits right in between. Imagine a 5.1 right in the middle of this zone. Well, then we watch either side, and both sides are going to be hit then by additional 5s, which means that, again, the possibility for a new 5 to develop will develop here, just east of our triangular bend. That'll happen within the next 24 hours. And to the west, since there's 2 new volcanic blasts. And the west, of course, is here in Papua New Guinea at the north part of the island. And those should both be in the 5 to 5.1 range, striking. It fits with the rest of the 5s. Those are our two silent zones. So if we could see the volcano there, it would stand for, or the two volcanoes, this would stand for a 5 right in the middle of here. Okay? As we go to the west, we have a point in between these two zones. You see South Indonesia. Over to the west, we have our huge earthquake that struck that killed 100 people. And we have 4s and 5s over to the east. Well, if we add the 4s and 5s over to the east with the 4s that are over here to the west over the past 48 hours since the big one hit, that means the area in between is at risk for at least a 5.4 right here in the middle, south of Malaysia, right along the plate boundary in Indonesia. And that would be within 48 hours. Up to the north, we have another silent zone. That's in between the 5.0 near Taiwan and the cluster of earthquakes all the way down here at Indonesia. And the halfway point in between these two zones puts us in eastern Philippines, southeastern Philippines. Let's just make sure that's right. Or central Philippines, I'm sorry. Central Philippines, right along the coast. And it puts Guam back at risk. Because remember what I told you. Both sides are hit. Just like this 4.6 up here in the 5.0. Both sides will be hit, equidistantly spaced. So Guam and the central portion of Philippines both need to be on watch for a 5.1 to strike on both sides. 100% on both sides. It'll be similar size. So it might be a 5 and a 5.1. They might be 0.1 off, but it'll be a definitely similar sized earthquake on both sides at the little itty bitty tiny island of Guam, which is a pinprick out here. You can see it, if you can even see it right there. Okay, right on Guam, and then to the west, due west, we have Central Philippines, both looking for that 5.1. Why 5.1? You add the 5 to the north with the cluster of 4s to the south. And there's only 3 4s to the south, so it just takes us to 5.1. Okay? Then, to the north, there's another silent zone. We're naming all the silent zones right now, guys. So, as we go to the north, you have a 5.0 here, and then we go all the way across. We get past Kamchatka. No new eruptions today in Kamchatka, by the way. And we go out to the Aleutian Island chain where our 3.1 is. Well, we go in between those two zones, and our halfway point brings us down here into the Kuril Islands, North Japan. And the magnitude we're going to look for there is similar in magnitude to all the other locations around the Pacific. We have one deep earthquake as a contender here that could bring it up to the potential of a 5.6 to the north. So we look for a 5.6 north of Hokkaido, Kuril Islands. There's just these little islands right here, north of the mainland of Japan. We have to keep on watch within 100, 200 miles of that location. So it's a stretch here, north of Japan. It's the middle point. It should be hit. Okay, the middle point between what? Again, between the 3.1 and the 5.0. And you have to follow the bends in the plate, and that's how we get to Kuril Islands as being the halfway point. Already told you what to watch for on the West Coast, how long to watch for it there. The only other spot I haven't talked about yet is down here in New Zealand. So, let's get into it. Let's turn on the GeoNet, which is going to show us the last 30 earthquakes from New Zealand. And many people have been watching throughout the past day, day and a half, 2 days. And again, it really comes in handy when other people are looking as well, so that we don't all just have to rely on me or one single feed. I trust 1,000 eyes as opposed to my own. And when we take a look at it, I think a lot of people have agreed it has started to settle down a little bit there with just 2.0s along the plate boundary. However, to the north, the largest earthquakes of the day, it looks like, or at least of the last 30, I should say. The largest earthquake of the last 30 struck down to the south with a single deep earthquake as well mixed in there. But it's not terribly deep. It's about 70 to 80 kilometers deep. Not deep enough to be down below the crust. It's in the crust. Now, I believe that's related to the plate boundary. Look where it fell, right on our red line. So, what are we watching for? We're going to have to watch for the potential. Again, like I said a day and a half ago, we're watching for the north part of the island to show 5.0 activity, and we're watching for the south portion of the island to show upper 5.0 activity, and this goes right down to our middle point between the X and the cluster on the plate boundary that we see now. And to me, the middle point comes right south of the island, right there. So I would expect the larger of the movement to actually occur south of New Zealand at any point now. And to the north, we would just see, again, something similar, which I guess we shouldn't be shocked. There was a 5 to the north. Hold on one second. I'm totally overlooking that. There was a 5 that just struck to the north earlier today. So there it is, or a day ago. There it is. So a 5 did strike to the north, considerably to the north. That's just something we have to take into account as well, that the pressure expended itself possibly to the north, pretty much right next to our deep earthquake location. So it seems to be almost instantaneous, or within a day, that when we see a new deep earthquake, here we see it immediately excite things up back in New Zealand at the previous fracture location. But it's expending the energy as soon as it comes in. It doesn't allow for it to build into a larger earthquake. The biggest that we're seeing are these 4s, which are just pretty much, I would call, almost aftershocks, but they're spreading all the way along that plate boundary, just letting us know that every time pressure's coming in, it's going to hit immediately. And that's good, like I said, because it expends the pressure. So the potential for a large earthquake in New Zealand right now is less than we were looking at over the past several weeks. And that's good. That's good news. We should all be happy about that. And if we see a whole round of new deep earthquakes up here, you know to watch for an increase almost immediately that will go up into the 4 range here along the plate boundary. This is your new pressure release spot here, guys. So when pressure's coming in, it's going to seek that place out, boom, and it's going to release. That's why you're getting swarms of 2s right now, because it's still rumbling because of the pressure still coming in. So, all right. So that sums it up for the planet pretty much. The only area I didn't touch on was over here in the East Caribbean. All we're looking for, I told you guys last night, we're looking for this to transfer out to the Mid-Atlantic Ridge and release in a 5. Central America is still on watch for another 48 hours. If you guys want to hear what we talked about last night, then you, of course, go watch the update on my channel. We talked about El Salvador. We talked about Central America. It's a warning area. I don't take it lightly, but we're looking off the coast for a 5. It's not that big of a deal. It could go up to an upper 5, low 6. But again, if it strikes off the coast, it's not that big of a deal. Only if it strikes on land does it become a threat to anybody. It just fulfills what we're looking for this week's forecast. We are 4 days in on the 7-day forecast. So, what can I say? Almost every area that we've talked about so far has been hit. The new watch zones need to be taken seriously off the coast of the United States. If I'm 100 miles off, it will be striking on land, and you'll be noticing it. And you'll be wondering, what the heck is this 5 range earthquake doing? Why are we getting shaking here? Okay? Don't be caught off guard by it, guys. It's all caused by these deep earthquakes. There's so many deep earthquakes over the past couple days. 10,000 miles displaced from Fiji over to the Middle East. You can see the earthquakes raised off the globe, indicating their depth, and it lets us know half the planet has now been perturbed. There's no way we're going to get out of this without some large movement in between these zones that have moved like this. No way. Which means that in the next few days, it may take a few days, 10,000 miles has been displaced. Last week, I was talking about how many there were, and I'd never seen that. Now we're talking about half the planet displaced with deep earthquakes. I don't think I've ever seen that either. Not going this way. Not going from Fiji over to the Middle East. I've seen it happen around the Pacific Ring of Fire. But in this direction, I'm starting to get curious about what's going on, guys. With the deep earthquakes, we've got to start looking at the culprit. And the culprit is the core of the Earth. Something is pushing up from the core of the Earth, increasing pressure. I don't know what's causing it. It's a topic of study that I think scientists should be looking into, because it could have potential ramifications long term for our planet. And I mean, if we're talking about some kind of disturbance happening, it's something that we need to get our heads around as to why it's happening, if it's happened in a cycle before, or if it's something new. None of these things can be determined if we ignore the problem. And the problem is the deep earthquakes are spreading out. Each spot where we see deep earthquakes, we're seeing shallow, larger movement happen within a short period of time. And that's not good for the areas that are getting hit by these deep earthquakes. Just ask the people in Italy. Italy was hit by a deep 5.8 in the days before the big one hit a month ago. And what does that mean? Or 2 months ago now, actually. So when the deep earthquake hit, they had 1 day to prepare. 1 day. And then we can overlook it, but if you overlook it, you ignore it at your own peril. And that to me is foolish. You would never ignore a tornado coming at you. You would never ignore a hurricane coming at you. So you wouldn't ignore pressure coming at you. And going into tomorrow in Europe, for instance, the pressure that's coming at you, take a look at it. A deep earthquake, a swarm of fours, a 4 on your doorstep, and a renewed swarm in Italy. I would dare say you know what's coming. Another 4 in your neck of the woods. Not a big deal, but it will scare people if they don't know to look for it. They might think it's another big one. And we don't want people to panic. Do not panic. Don't be scared. Be prepared. And being prepared means looking down the road, and now we have a roadmap for you to look on. You can watch the pressure transfer along these lines outwards. It's amazing. And this map, thanks to Sumo and Squeaky and all the people, and Rebecca the Explorer, and everybody who's been part of helping me get this put together, get it out to the world. I could never have done it without you guys. MC Player, just guys, seriously, you deserve a medal or a trophy or something. Maybe I'll get you a trophy printed up at some point if I ever come into some extra cash. But until then, my heartfelt thanks, and the thanks from everybody here on the live stream who are going to be benefiting from the use of all these streams. So, real quick, let me just go ahead and show you a few examples. Take a look at the Canada stream. This is showing us all the Canadian earthquakes over the last 30 days. Take a look at that. And let's just look at the last few days. Notice anything, guys? How about the fact that the USGS isn't reporting 3.5s right at the border? Oh, they're not tasked with doing that, Dutch. Oh yeah, what about their global greater than 2.5 feed? So, check it out. Western Canada swarming out near Bella Bella and Vancouver over the last week. Pretty obvious, right? Pumping operations struck in Alberta and BC as well. Nunavut struck up to the north near Greenland. I mean, just that alone. Or we go back just a couple more days and you see the activity that struck along the East Coast. How about that? Quebec, Maine, New Brunswick. So, because we now have these feeds, we are able to expand and look at things in an entirely different perspective. And nobody can gatekeep the information anymore. Gatekeeping in science is something that scientists, for some reason, think is a good idea, where they get to control the data that's disseminated to the public. And to me, that is troublesome. It really is. Okay, so we don't want gate-kept information. We want open, free-flowing information that we can then discern, decide, study, reject, accept, or do whatever we want with. And that's, to me, is what real science is. So we're fighting a fight to try and get the better things done that people have been striving to know for a long time. Earthquake information on a real-time basis from around the planet. And we're doing it thanks to you guys. So you'll be able to tune in here eventually and see a global feed of all the earthquakes, such and such and greater. So we can choose 2 and greater, 3 and greater, 4 and greater. That to me is something that I think would be ideal for use by students, professionals, people interested. Nobody else has done it. We'd be the first to do it. And we're doing it not because I can do it, but because you guys can. Isn't that awesome? Seriously, that's so freaking awesome. All right, so I'm done. How many people are in here right now? I can't even see. I don't have the window open. Let's take a look. Looks like we're topping out at about 600 people tonight. That's cool. If you could, please subscribe. Please get the warnings out. The warnings are over on my YouTube channel. The other way we can know which places to watch, you guys can learn yourself from watching on a day-to-day basis. And I've explained it before, but I will explain it one more time. We look in our silent zones, the spots where we see there haven't been any earthquakes recently, and we compute our magnitudes by adding the magnitudes on both sides together. So you add a 5.0 plus a 5.3, 5 on one side, 5.3 on the other. That's 5.13. Okay? Or you could also compute it 5.41. But either way, we're looking at a mid-range 5 striking in the middle point. The reason that we look at the middle point between whatever zone you're looking at, fulcrum points tend to be hit next. The middle point between the two zones that have moved. It's simple physics. But you have to apply it over a vast area. And then what you find, there's many silent points. And that's why we see many follow-up earthquakes. And they seem random at first, but then when you look closer, you start to see we're seeing the middle point of each fulcrum point between the zones that previously moved next. Then that takes the random out of it completely. And that takes the fear out of it. So, don't be scared. Be prepared. Pay attention to what's going on. And you'll be 10 times better off than anybody on your street, anybody in your town who isn't paying attention. We all know, really, what happens when people get injured in catastrophes is during the panic portion of the catastrophe. If you're calm and cool and collected, you might even be able to survive a building collapse. I'm serious, and not every time, but that if you know what to do when something's going down, that's you're going to be way better off than the person who's panicking, just trying to scramble, not knowing what's going on. It just holds true in everything in your life. Okay? All right, guys, so the lecture is done. We are looking in the silent spots. There are many silent spots that have developed, which means there's many earthquakes to hit in the next few days. And they're going to be larger. They already are. They creep back up to 5s. They went to 6s. We saw 6s hit. Now we're kind of plateauing out at that 5 to 6 range. And that's not good. It's going to go up one more notch. Should. We already saw a 7.0, 6.5 kill 100 people that wouldn't or didn't get the warning, I should say. I'm not going to say they wouldn't listen. They didn't get the warning in Indonesia. We issued the warning for Indonesia right here. And here, let me show you where we talked about. We talked about right here along the coast of Sumatra where it meets the Indo-Australian plate at the triangular bend. That's the spot we warned. And we said watch for 1 to 2 magnitudes larger than the deep 6.3 that hit over here the day before. So the deep 6.3 hit, then the shallow 7 hit. Now they went with 6.5. Whatever, 100 people are dead. I would dare say it's bigger than 6.5. But regardless, there's your shallower, larger earthquake, striking within just a few hundred miles of the warning zone and inside the warning zone. So if the people in northwest Sumatra would have been warned, they could have slept outside that night, or at least been by the door, so that when it hit, they could be up and out. Not panicking, outside, already knowing what to expect. But because they didn't get the warning, 100 people are now dead, and an area devastated. Oh, man. I get hot under the collar when I start thinking about it. So I don't know why they don't get the warnings. I've tried everything I can to get it out to the world. It's almost like people, YouTube or whatever, has put me on a back burner, or they don't want to take it serious, or they don't want people to know. There's many explanations why, but none of them are good. None of them are good. But I rely on you guys to get the information out because I'm not paying for marketing. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe because I didn't sell out and join a multi-channel network and, do the whole popular YouTube thing. But you would think you wouldn't have to do that in science, that if you make some big discovery or you start forecasting earthquakes correctly, that they would let their thumb up off and say, okay, you know what, you don't have to join the special club here to do well. We'll let you do well regardless. I mean, I didn't think I was going to have to join and sell out to get that. And I don't know if I would ever want to. I don't know. They never offered. So, I'd never know because nobody ever made any offer. That all being said, guys, I'm here for you for the next year, regardless of what happens with the YouTube and the views and all that good stuff. If you like my content, please subscribe and share it. The fundraising is done. We are here now solely to work for the next year on earthquake forecasting. And the way things are going, with the amount of work you guys are putting in to help, we're going to have a whole bunch of information that's going to save future generations, guys. There's no doubt about it. Future generations will use this information and their lives will be saved or affected because of what you're doing right now, not because of me anymore, but because you guys are combining the global feeds and taking the information and using it. It's now getting out there to the world, regardless of media or acceptance or peer review paper, whatever you want to call it. Okay, so there's my lecture. I'm done lecturing. Oh, I love it. I love it. That's what YouTube's for. Preaching. Have a good night, morning, afternoon, evening, depending on where you are. And I will be back in a little bit. You know what? I've got a Berliner Weiss pint. A pint of Berliner Weiss that I need to drink. And I was going to drink it the other night. But then we got sidetracked and I got all bummed out and they shut me down and la 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 la. And yeah, so I might bust open the pint tonight and have a little drinky drink with you guys. And we'll probably do that right after midnight. So hit it right after midnight. And yeah, that'll give me about an hour right now to go hang out with my wife before she crashes out. Peace out, guys. Much love.